Morning and welcome back to another one of our complete hole design videos, and in this one we're going to look at the 10th, which has been partly because it's been a hole that's troubling me a lot. It's got arguably, I would say, probably the best tee shot sight line. When you look at the mountains in the backdrop, look great, and a really good green sight, and it just, for whatever reason, I've tried 3 or 4 times and it just hasn't clicked. Nothing I've done felt right. One of the difficulties I've had is because of how I'm trying to do this course. I'm trying to put in a lot of short fours. So we've got 3 is short, 6, 8 is 370 odd, 10 would be one of them, 13 we saw about a week or so ago when I did that. There's the drive ball one, and then yeah, and that's going to be all of our short fours. So I've kind of used a lot of this, not the same ideas, but every time I started doing something I felt I was doing the same thing as I'd done elsewhere. But I do now think I have a bit of an idea, and it's kind of reliant on what I think the land is trying to do anyway, which is flowing pretty hard this way, and it's going to fit into 17 as well, which is also having that same big land movement from left to right. Well, if you look in the landing zone, it's far more. And I quite like that when you've got 2 holes that are basically following the same landform, so like this, if you're routing one that way down it and one the other way, you've both got elevation change downhill and off the tee it's from right to left, so that's posing one challenge, and the other one uphill, left to right, and immediately that's giving you variety without you really doing much other than thinking carefully about where you're putting those holes. So the problems I've run into with this have been on this shorter hole with this much downhill. Driver, it's hard not to really pinch driver without it looking very claustrophobic, because you're having to do so much bunkering in a landing zone, and the landing zone is kind of spread out because of the elevation change as well. So that was part of it. Partly I felt like I was repeating an idea from 6 on one or 8 on another, or it was at one point it was drive ball and it just felt too easy, or I originally had it as a tight dogleg where it was just all coming around the corner, and I might go back because I quite like that idea of that view. But I think what I'm going to start doing with this one is, I know that I want the fairway to be this way. I know that I want driver to not necessarily always be the play, so I think I'm going to play into that camber and have you really risk rolling off the fairway on the left hand side if you're not careful, which probably means having some bunkers up here. We're thinking about that, so therefore you're either challenging the high side or rolling down to the low side. Part of what I love about holes like this, if you do it well, and it takes a lot of practice, I can have it so that you can get to your ideal spot in a number of different ways. So I want to make a green that's going to reflect that. So either you're holding the high side here, which is challenging those bunkers, and that's a good shot, and maybe for certain pins that's the play, or you're hitting it down to here and, like, let's say landing short and rolling out, or you could be hitting to the middle and using the slope to bring you down to this point, and maybe that's a good shot. So it's leading into, in my mind, one of those holes where you've got a preferred side of the fairway. So for some pins you might want to be on the left, some you might want to be on the right, and if you're in the middle you're safe, you're not playing close to that trouble or that trouble, but you're going to have a side hill lie which is complicating your next shot. So then I'm starting to think ahead to the green, and well, what sort of a hole or green complex is going to make that decision really matter? We're going to have to be able to see where the pin is off the tee, so we'll work on that. Well, not have to, well, I'd really like you to be able to. So I'm straight away thinking of, well, if we have a side on green and let's say a lion's mouth bunker, say something like that, if I'm coming from this side and going to that pin, that's going to be less than ideal compared to here where I don't have to go over that bunker. And the reverse is true. If I'm coming from this side here versus this side here, that shot is much more complicated because you're coming over the bunker. So I think that's where I'm going with this hole. Now, what's going to be the trickiest part of this? Probably sculpting the sightlines so that you can see the green all the way. You can see whether the pin's left or right. So I think for me it's not a must, but it really is desirable. of if you're going to have a fairway where I'm saying, well, for some days you want to be left, some days you want to be right, you want to know that off the tee if we possibly can. But with the land movement and this being high and this being low, that might be tricky. I think it might need a few big land moves, but it should be doable. Secondly, I want to be able to give you as good a view in that approach as possible, because I think this view is going to be outstanding. We've got 16 built out now. You can see 15 coming together, 14 in the background should work quite nicely as well, and the river will have a lot more planting too. So we're going to work on that view quite a lot and then almost work backwards, I think, or look at both in tandem is probably the easiest way. And then the final thing is, if I'm not wanting you to hit driver, I'm doing this quite a bit on the back nine, and I think it fits quite well. I'm probably going to split the fairway as well, so you can't just bomb driver, you really have to think, and you've got to worry about rolling out as well. Then maybe we make the fairway slightly longer on this side, because that's going to really encourage you to challenge those bunkers, whereas also it then makes that slope play even bigger, because if you're worried about rolling out of fairway here short, you're going to hedge your bets towards here because you've got more fairway to run into vertically. So I think that makes sense. And just looking at our split fairway, we could even roll that into the lion's mouth bunker, and that would feel like a more natural extension. So like one big kind of waste bunker thing. We've done bunkers coming out of the natural area is pretty common, so I think that will fit well. That's pretty much it, I think, for the moment. I'm happier with this idea than I have been on any idea I've had for this hole so far. Measure tools look a bit of a mess. I'll probably change the green angle a little bit, because I think actually I might want it running sort of this way, and that would mean that there. Yeah, I think that's going to exacerbate the angles a little bit better. So, and also looking at your green sites as ever, what sorts of green shapes have you done in sites? So in my mind I'm thinking now shapes, like what angle are they onto the player. So 1 is diagonal, 2 I believe is kind of straight on and a bit of a diagonal, 3 is pretty much straight on, 4 is straight on diagonal but tapering away to the back, so wider at the front than it is at the back, which is slightly different. 5 is going to be more side on, but it kind of depends on your angle. 6 is straight on diagonal, tapering away at the back a bit, kind of a common theme for this course. 8 is more side on, but it's basically pin dependent. 9 straight on. So 10, having one that's kind of more sideways would fit well. We then look at the ones 11, a bit more circular and diagonal. 12, pretty much straight on, but might change depending on pin. 13, shallow and diagonal. 14 is kind of similar, but more space to play with. Haven't finished 14 yet. 15 was the one I was working on before this, and that's straight on. 16, bit more of the diagonal for that cape-ish green, but it's quite a wide green. And 17 and 18 I haven't done yet. So I think this is balanced. I think it fits. As mentioned in the last video I did, when you get to these later holes, it's all the more important that you keep zooming around the others and just think this sort of like challenging higher side versus rolling to low side. Have I done that anywhere else? If so, is it going to play? You can do the same thing twice, but try to vary pars or just make sure it feels different. Is it in a different direction? Got a very happy little baby this morning. And obviously the setting, I think, will take care of itself. I'm not worried about this hole in the slightest visually, but therefore it could be easy just to chuck an average hole down, and I want this one to be a really good hole because it's got such a good setting. And I think it's got that potential with this idea. I've also got to think about spacing a lot with this hole. I originally had the green down here and it was getting too tight. I may still move the whole thing, so we could move the green side back further so that it's closer to 16, but you want to think about whether you've got space long for green aprons and planting and things like that. And equally, you've got 17T and 11T, so it's quite a clustered area. If I can move it a little bit further back and have it play well, I might well do that, but it's not a must. So yeah, as ever, hopefully that was useful, and yeah. Okay, and this feels like a pretty good place to stop for this first episode. As you can see, the main thing has been getting the major idea down, and I think I like it. It's definitely a bit more extreme in terms of land movement than maybe I usually do, and I think it will just take a lot of playtesting to get about right. But the idea is there, so just clearing out the motor tools. The aim is you've got this higher right plateau, which is going to allow you a bit better access to the right hand side pins. And then on the left you've got the lower area where if you look at the angle compared to this side, you're going kind of down the throat of this bit of green, you've got much more to work with. Whereas if you're coming from the top side, well, you're hitting between two bunkers, which might be a little bit scary. I needed one bunker, I felt, on the back end just for it not to feel a bit samey, and we'll readjust the fairway around that. Conversely, going to the right hand side, coming over that bunker is going to be a much tougher shot from this side. Now I started doing some green sloping because I do want that if you end up on the wrong side of this bunker, you still have a putt, whether it's as simple as just hitting off this mound and rolling down. I'm not really sure how I'm going to factor that into the back tier yet, but we'll find something and work off it. Most bunker shaping is kind of, I mean, tentatively there, and I think the big views will be pretty good. Might sink the green a touch, because that might open up a little bit more of the rest of the plot. But we'll see that. I do, however, have the sightline working, which I'm really pleased with. Took a lot of time to make sure that you can see where the pin is roughly, even over these bunkers, which was, yeah, tricky. I don't think the fairway sculpting is by any means there yet, but it gives us an idea of what we're working with. So yeah, second episode in it. I think what I'll do next is just tidy up the fairway shapes and sculpting, get the waste bunker and this bunker's right, sort out green sculptings so that all four pins play relatively well, and then probably end up sculpting some bunkers and then planting this thing. I'm hoping won't take as long. I'm seeing tree lines coming in down this side, which should block out some of the view and also emphasize that elevation change a bit more. This bottom end will be a bit more open. We've got some scrub planting that will go in there. So yeah, there we are with first episode. Hopefully it gives you some ideas, and you can see how the core idea just evolved. I mean, you pretty much saw it happen in front of you. Hope you enjoyed, and see you soon.